All right, we are officially recording. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I believe, Carol, that we are the last of the crawl presentations. And we would just like to thank the Native American Egg Credit and Foundation for helping sponsor this. And without further ado, we'll get started.
All right. All right. So are you just seeing the single
I am.
slide? Excellent. Okay, so this talks on small scale agricultural production. Your co-hosts are myself, Carol Bishop, and Lindsay Chichester. We're both extension educators. Lindsay's up in Douglas County, and I'm down here in Northeast Clark County. So we both have very different but similar experiences with small scale production. So today we're going to talk about some of the aspects that are unique to small scale production. And as each of these, we bring up each of these things, we're going to ask the question whether it is a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. And we discussed this. This is called the SWOT analysis, which Lindsay discussed a few weeks ago in one of her other presentations. And I'm going to just give an example here. I have this lovely bee on this flower. Lindsay and I are both into bees, Lindsay much more so. So it's the example would be is if you're a small scale farmer and you have somebody beekeeping on the property next to you. How does that affect you as a small scale farmer? Well, it could be a strength because those bees are going to give added pollination to whatever crops that you may have, but it can also be a threat if you're allergic to bees. So depending on the scale, depending on your opportunity, it could be an opportunity to utilize those bees. And so it just each situation has unique things, especially related to small scale production. So it may fit more than one category. So the first thing about small scale is going to be the property size, because you don't have the largest. So some possible strengths for these. The fact that you don't have a large size is less need for large equipment, and it's able to be managed with less personnel. You're not going to need that combine if you're only farming 10 to 15 acres. You're not going to need the huge outlay of capital for that equipment. Also, you're going to not have to have a whole ginormous crew. You're not going to have to hire in people to the extent that you would if you had a larger operation. Some weaknesses. And this is called economies of scale with certain crops. Economies of scale means that at a certain point, either too small or too big, the crop is unmanageable or not economically viable. As in the case, this was very much the case in the allotments in Pyramid Lake. The people there wanted to do alfalfa. However, 20 acres of alfalfa is the equipment and the cost needed to process that. Even if you were to have custom work done, is such that you cannot make money on 20 acres. So we did the budget on that to show that it's not economically viable at that size to be able to get their allotments increased. There are some opportunities for having a small size and doing small scale production. When you go to purchase property, it's going to cost you a lot less. And there's a lot better chance of you leasing a small acreage than there is a large. But you've also, the threat is that you face competition by large producers who can do more volume and outcompete you.
Yeah, specifically, and I think we talk about this in a little bit, but in price, if they can do a larger scale with more acreage, generally the price is lower than what a small acreage, small scale producer would be able to do.
And that's especially true if you're trying to grow something that everybody else is already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about that later in cropland. So, Lindsay, you want to take this one?
Sure. So next we want to just talk about the farm management aspect. So what does managing the farm look like? Oh, Carol, I think you'll have to be the slide advancer. So again, looking at the SWOT analysis, the strengths, of course, the lifestyle. Everybody loves the agriculture lifestyle, waking up, having the dirt, the animals, being able to grow things, and then just personal sustainability. So, you know, growing your own food, raising your own food, knowing how it was raised, what the animals were fed. So there's a lot of personal responsibility and happiness associated with that.
And if everything goes to heck in a handbasket, you know you have something to eat.
That's right.
That's especially important in today's ever-changing situation.
That's right. So weaknesses, like most things, when you're your own boss, you do have more responsibility 24/7. You work a lot of hours, weekends, nights, holidays, and then you're usually the person that has to do everything. You're running the production side of things, marketing, sales, bookkeeping, HR, you know, everything that comes with it, because you do have a small staff or a small crew, and you are all of those people generally. However, there's some pretty great opportunities that can exist throughout all of this. And those are, you determine all aspects of the business. So not only do you manage all of those things, but you get to make the decisions. So if you want to change gears and plant something different or raise different animals, niche breeds, heirloom type vegetables, you get to more quickly make those decisions and pivot accordingly. Get to build your family bonds. So sometimes, you know, that's just with a partner or spouse, the children, maybe some parents, siblings. So it's up to you to determine, you know, the family and creating those strengths, and even neighbors potentially. And so there's some cool opportunities that perhaps as a small acreage or small business that would be able to exist that wouldn't in a larger scale system.
Yes, that cheap, free, you want a new Xbox, you get to pull weeds.
That's right. Yep. And with all of these, you know, we always have threats. One of them is just not enough hands at times. Sometimes maybe you need an extra employee, or it's seasonal, or sometimes, and so just not being able to have a consistent source of additional employees or knowledgeable employees, because you can't keep someone hired or employed full time, could be a real threat to the business. And then, you know, this isn't unique to small ranches or farms, I don't think, but one person may have to work away from the farm to help with some sort of an additional income or provide insurance to the family. And again, ties back into that first point with just not having enough hands. So it could be a divide and conquer situation, which sometimes you just have to do what you have to do to make everything work and make the dream a reality.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
So it's like, okay, who's doing the work to support the farm? Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the advantages, and then we're going to talk about crop and livestock selection. And this is kind of unique for small acreages, because there are strengths with that. The flexibility is you get to pick, you have more of a chance to pick what you're growing because you are in charge of that operation. Also with this, there's less chance of, if you have a large operation, usually it's because you're growing a monoculture or growing all black or raising all black Angus. And if there's something that comes along that is a pest or disease that will infect that, and for these large scale operations, and something comes in, it can wipe out their whole operation. Whereas small operations are usually have a more varied crop mix or a more varied livestock mix. And so one thing coming in is not going to decimate your whole operation. You may lose a portion, but you won't lose the whole thing. So that's very much of a strength for the small operator. However, if you've got 10 different types of crops or an assortment of animals that you're raising, each of those things need different amounts of care. They're going to need to be looked after differently. They're going to need different chemicals or different shots or different management. So, and keeping track of all of that can be difficult. But you also have the ability to follow trends. And you know how things like right now, especially Black Angus is all the big thing. Well, and for a while it was all Wagyu. So you have, as a small operator, you can more easily switch. When kale first came out, and kale was a big deal. Everybody wanted kale, and then everybody wanted goji berries. You have, because you are a small operation, you have the ability to, like, okay, I make the decision that I'm gonna do that instead of this. And so you're able to capitalize on that spur of the moment or the latest trends to be able to get with it in time, whereas a larger operation would have many steps to be able to shift gears to do something different. You also have the opportunity to offer more unique or unusual products like the goji berry, or everybody's all of a sudden, wanting those heirloom black tomatoes. Black tomatoes are a thing. Okay, let's go ahead and plant black tomatoes, or switch to, who knows, maybe some sort of new beef. I know Black Angus is still kind of the standard right now, but Lindsay, have you heard of any meat variety, beef varieties that are in style or are coming up?
We've got some producers up in this northern part of the state that are starting to grow the Dexters again. So they're kind of a smaller, real moderate frame size, which do well on the small acreages because they don't require as much forage as some of the larger breeds. Right. And then not necessarily but for meat, but for kind of the tourism public interest piece, the Highland cattle, so the ones with the really long hair and the horns. I've seen a few of those just as more of the pet and the photo opportunity. But the Dexters are becoming, or the low line Angus, so the smaller version of the traditional Angus.
So the mini Angus, yeah.
Yep.
the sports car compact version rather than the sedan.
That's
Okay,
right. They need less feed and they still make a meat product. So
excellent, excellent. And you're also able to use products in multiple ways. If, whereas, say you're a tomato grower and you don't sell out all your product, well, if you were a large scale production, that large scale producer, that rest is just that he's unable to sell at that fresh point is just waste. Whereas you have, as a small scale producer, the opportunity to take that and turn it into a value added product, tomato sauce or spaghetti sauce or something, or sun dried tomatoes, and then sell it. So you have ability to use that product in multiple ways because you do have that control and that ability to adapt that is more unique to small scale.
yeah, and I see that a lot, Carol, with milking goats, dairy goats specifically. So you've got the milk and then it can be made into cheese and then you can make lotions and creams. And so, you know, the dairy animals, specifically small in this example, have been really good at being able to adapt that way.
Yes, I have bought quite a bit of goat soap. Yes.
It is nice.
The threats is you may be limited on what can be raised or grown due to your size. That's like I was talking about 20 acres of alfalfa may be okay to feed your animals, but you're not going to make enough profit from it to, in most cases, to be able to have that be a crop. So you're not going to be able to do ethanol corn or other things because of your size of your acreage. So large commodity crops are kind of out the window, and that's not, you want to go the almost the exact opposite from that anyway. You don't want to be growing anything, pretty much anything that you see in the store. You're not going to be able to compete with big box on those items. And that's why for both growers and ranchers, you want those unique things. You want that grass fed. You want that different variety that the big boys don't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen a lot of, well, not a lot. Up here, we've got 2 cut flower farms now that, you know, just have an acre or less, and they're doing really well raising cut flowers and fresh flowers. And it's a great use of some of their space.
I really like that, Lindsay, because down here that's a very nice go around for the health district because flowers aren't eaten typically.
Right.
And so that's kind of a nice little get around if you have a very, there's probably not a lot of places like Clark County, but we have a very constricting health department. So yeah, cut flowers, amazing. And that I have one of my first farmer successes was a gentleman that grew sunflowers out here that sold them to the Vegas markets. And the amount that he got per stem, even on the wholesale side, was quite amazing. So yeah,
Oh, I bet.
I can't forget flowers and nursery crops. Okay. Public perception.
All right. So next we'll talk about just the public perception and some of what that looks like. Right now, it's very trendy to know your farmer, know your food. People are more curious than ever on where their food comes from, who's growing it, how they're growing it, what the animals are eating. Is it non-GMO? Is it organic? So there's a lot of different opportunities that exist more than ever. And Carol, you kind of alluded to this before of, you know, if the last year and a half has shown us anything, it's that the food security and that relationship with the people who raise food is important. You know, we saw a lot of people that did the victory gardens. People were buying chickens, backyard chickens. So just this, even in beekeeping, I don't know if you see it down there, but I've seen it here where people just were really curious and wanted to get into it. And and learn how to do it themselves, or have the opportunity to meet the people that are raising their food. We've talked about some of the heirlooms, some of the more traditional breeds, if you will, of animals. So there's a lot of strengths right now in just around this whole, no local, grow local type of mindset. Obviously a weakness is just a lack of understanding of the whole actual cost of production. So when it's grown local and grown small, or, grown on a smaller acreage, sometimes the prices look a lot different than the larger scale. So
$4 for a tomato? Are you kidding me? Yeah.
well, $5 for a dozen eggs, those aren't what we see in the store. And it's because it is different. You're supporting a local farmer or rancher, and helping them achieve what they need to, and the inputs that they have into it, versus the large scale. So you do pay for the story, you pay for, helping them be in the business that they're in. And sometimes that is hard for people to accept those prices and why they're being charged that.
However, most of my producers have told me once they get somebody as a customer, it's the difference in the eggs. Oh my word. Yeah. Do I want something that's kind of a yellowish color for a yolk, or do I want something that's a deep, rich orange that you can just tell that is, okay? Taste this tomato compared with this tomato. And
oh yeah,
and it's crazy. It's very easy to, like, even when I go to the store and I buy tomatoes at the store, I will get the way I select my tomato is I get usually the ones that are still on the vine, and I will pick the bunch of tomatoes up and smell to see, do they have the tomato smell, and the vine ripe ones, the vine ones that are ready to go still have that tomato smell, whereas any other tomato in the store doesn't have that. So once it is a weakness, but you can turn it into a strength once they've drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Yes,
exactly.
I can never go back. I could go back to regular eggs if I had to, but no.
I think tomatoes is the most obvious one, though.
Yes.
So some of the opportunities, you have an ability to sell off the farm. Farmers markets, we see a lot of the small scale producers at farmers markets. Maybe they have a CSA, community supported agriculture, which is a subscription box with meat, produce, eggs, flowers, honey, anything they're growing. So it's a fun opportunity to create those relationships with the consumers and the people buying your product, to just meet you at local places. And the next one, Carol, we talk a little bit about having people there was a berry farm here in Douglas County where people could go and, pick some of their own berries. And I know that orchards sometimes do that with apples and different things, but a really fun thing too is having like an on-farm harvest dinner, a luncheon, meet the farmer. So the weekend events. There's a place in the Carson Valley that started doing little farm camps. So they've got animals, and parents can send their kids, or adults can come as well, but you get to go help feed the animals, clean out their stalls and pens, ride them, pet them. So it's kind of a fun little, the kids work for it, but then they also get to have an experience that they don't have at home. And, they have these animals. And so, there's a lot of ways to be creative. This place also does goat yoga, which is kind of a thing right now. And from my friends who have attended, they say it's a lot, not very much yoga, and a lot of goat petting and snuggling. So there's lots of different opportunities of tapping into those unique things that are specific to just usually our small scale producers, or the small acreage folks.
And kind of a bonus for us down, in Nevada is that if you're just selling fresh produce, the only thing you have to do that is a producer certificate. They cannot, you cannot be required, if you're just selling fresh produce, to have to pay for any other licensing. So, which down here in Clark County, that saves a behind load of money because you're not having to buy a state business license and a Clark County business license. So that's just a little extra bonus.
Mm-hmm. And then their threat with this could be just preconceptions of appearance and quality that, maybe if they're going more of a holistic, natural goal, they're not using chemicals to control the weeds. They're using animals. Does the quality suffer because of that? So a lot of times just the perception around what that might look like is different than we see on the larger operations.
Yeah,
Not bad, just different.
Yeah, your sizes are not going to necessarily be, they're not going to be all the same size. They're not going to be all the same color. But
Yeah.
there is now, I understand, Lindsay, and somebody was talking to me about this, and I was like, what? There is an ugly food movement.
There is.
So it's like, it's like used to be shelter pets were kind of unwanted and the ragamuffins, and now there was the big movement, oh, everybody adopt. And so maybe this ugly food movement will catch on as well.
Yeah, it's a popular thing. I have friends that subscribe to, boxes that are shipped to your house with foods that weren't pretty enough to be put in the grocery stores, but they're just fine. And yeah, it is interesting though, the ugly food movement.
So this slide about outside impacts is, as a small scale production person, there's you're highly vulnerable to outside impacts, but you are self-sufficient. If everything goes sideways, you still have enough to feed your family, whether it be your animals or your produce or something. And as a farmer or rancher, anybody making a living, you have lots of experience with adapting to changes, because that's constant. It's you're dealing with Mother Nature. So this is not something that's new to you. Some of the weaknesses, though, if there's certain government programs like to get an FSA, some of the loans, you have to have at least 51% or more of your income coming from that farm. So, earlier how we talked about, usually it's necessary to have somebody working outside the home. So that can be a weakness if your farm or ranching operation is not the main income source for you. It's hard to get some programs. But on the other side, there are government programs that are specifically for that small or beginner, so that cater to them, that don't require the 3 years of taxes showing that you made a profit from the business. So that it works both ways there. Also, as we've seen with COVID, there's an opportunity, because any shortages that occur, you have what everybody is looking for, your direct source, rather than having to go through a middleman. The most outstanding example of this in my mind is when we were having the meat shortages a while back because of the shutdown of the processing. The local meat processors were booked beyond, because everybody panicked because they couldn't get meat in the store. So then they went to their local uh, rancher and said, I need a half a cow. And he says, well, I can give you half a cow, but the butcher's whipped out a couple of weeks or a month. So you are a source during, so when these outside impacts come in, you are in a place where you're able to provide when the large box stores can't sometimes.
Well, and hopefully in those scenarios, then the small agriculture producers create customers that continue to stay with you, whether it's poultry or the larger meat animals, eggs even, because you do constantly have a supply year round.
Yeah, and so that's one of the, I haven't started with the chicken yet. I really don't like store chicken, but I think I may need to look at somebody that's a local chicken meat supplier, because I've seen things on the internet about the differences in the breed between the usual meat birds and regular birds. It's like, so I don't like store chicken. So maybe, and I'm thinking it's like anything else. Once you've tasted small scale grown that has all that care and love put into it, that it tastes different. And so maybe that's the case with chickens as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Um, some of the threats are increased regulations with uh, uh, the Food Safety Act and things, but there is, it's also a strength because there is in some of those, because there is allowances for small scale that there are not for the large scale. But there's the scariest one is for me is the water shortages, because who are they going to try to take the water away from first? It's not going to be the big guys.
Right. Yeah, because unfortunately the big guys have the oldest water rights. So,
Usually, yes.
and the most money and power and all those other political things.
Minor details.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
let me just, this is a little sampling here. So this is an old Allison Chambers that one of my, I went to visit Canada, and one of my relatives had this old tractor, and I just thought it was just beautiful. And so I took a picture of that. This basket of mixed vegetables, that's from one of our local producers a few years back. The pumpkins, I grew. I threw a bunch of seeds in that I thought were very, 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 very old, of all these Connecticut field pumpkins. And I had an amazing crop. I just have a section in my little backyard that's about 8 feet by 12 feet. They overtook it. The pumpkins overtook that section so much that they outcompeted the bindweed.
Wow.
Yes, I was like, I'm planting pumpkins every year. This rosemary is from, that's what the rosemary on the paper, that's from a plant that we've had here at the extension office for many, many, many years. And I dried a bunch of it. Unfortunately, I had so much of it that it didn't even all get used. I didn't get it put away properly, but you learn lessons that way. This little orange guy, he was like, ooh, I want one of those. And then this picture is from a farm to fork dinner that we attended as part of a tour when we were doing a farm tour a few years ago. And this is in your neck of the woods, Lindsay. This is it's not the Jacobs farm. I think this is at Holly Farm.
Okay. Out by Dayton, Silver Springs area.
Yep. And it was wonderful. People really enjoyed it, and it was, I'm sure, and it was just an amazing experience to be sitting out there, and the animal pens are just to the right pretty much, and but it was a wonderful experience. And so there's an opportunity.
That's fun. Your rosemary reminded me, I've been getting lots of people interested in lavender. Lavender seems to kind of be a hot thing to grow right now.
And that's one of those things because you can do so much.
Mhm.
It's drought tolerant and there's so many uses that you can put it to. And once again, it circumvents that Department of Health and all the food safety issues because it's not a food product. So it's kind of a
Exactly. I have a mower going by my office.
win-win. All right. Well, I hope
Okay.
we've discussed some of your questions and concerns and given you a little insight into some of the challenges and the joys of being small scale. And it's very, very hard work, and I applaud all of you that do it. As I'm not a farmer because it's too much work. And so I like to support you the best I can because as you can see, I very much like to eat. So
Me too.
we appreciate all of you small scale producers and are willing to assist in any way that we can. So if you have any questions or anything that we can help you with, please don't hesitate to contact either Lindsay, myself, or anybody from our team with any questions that you may have.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.